Sorry, and welcome again. My apologies. It just happens
Right.
that way. Anyway, I would like to introduce you to our speakers today. Now I need to go back to my share. Well, I'm just not going to do that. So I have two speakers for you today. Jim Clarkson is the chairperson of the VIA family of companies. He serves on numerous boards and in advisory roles to the nation's leading healthcare providers. Jim previously served as a national vice president with Value Options. With Value Options, he was responsible for enterprises in emerging market areas, managed state substance abuse delivery systems, and served as an internal and external substance use disorder subject matter expert. That's a lot of words, Jim, gotta say. He's provided consultation and training nationally and internationally, including for the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, the Health Resources and Services Administration, and the Network for the Improvement of Addiction Treatment. But here's the important point for today's dialogue. Jim grew up in a town in Texas where being gay led to threats, violence, social and actual physical banishment. In leading organizations across his 40-year career, from emergency shelters to executive leadership across the country, Jim has creatively and intentionally lived way out and learned to create environments where people, especially LGBTQI plus people, could find, identify, own, express, and radiate their own goodness, compassionate power, and authentic selves, taking their rightful place among leading healers, advocates, clinicians, peers, and administrators to help shape what is spirited, beautiful, and expansive in behavioral health. Jim lives with his husband, Tommy, in Rockport, Texas, and Angel Fire, New Mexico. My second distinguished guest is Dr. Sam Donaldson, who is a seasoned leader in clinical behavioral health and behavioral managed care, celebrated for his innovative strategies and transformative leadership. Currently at the helm of Donaldson Health Care, he provides expert consulting to organizations seeking to enhance clinical operations and drive integrated behavioral health solutions. Sam has an extensive history of executive leadership, most notably during his tenure at Cenpatico Behavioral Health, an organization serving over 4 million Medicaid members across 18 states. He played a pivotal role in establishing industry-leading telehealth programs and behavioral integration initiatives, laying the groundwork for enterprise-wide rollouts. An educator at heart, my Sam. He also served as an adjunct assistant professor of psychology at Austin Community College. He remains at the forefront of transforming behavioral healthcare, whether through strategic board roles, pioneering clinical innovations, or imparting knowledge in the classroom. He is dedicated to shaping a future where integrated behavioral health drives sustainable, quality healthcare outcomes. As a gay man, Sam has navigated the hallways of corporate America to become one of our foremost leaders. Sam lives with his husband, Mark, in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. With that, Jim, this is yours. Thank you.
Great. Great. Thank you so much, Chris, for the introduction. Welcome, everybody. It's really a delight to have you here, Sam. As usual, anytime you and I get to work together, it's always a great pleasure. I'm still in the process of my elder coming out process, so I accept that name with a little bit of trepidation, but I'm working into it. One of the things I know from working with elders from various cultures around the world is oftentimes elders teach with stories and their lived experience. And so I wanted to share a story. Chris mentioned that I grew up in this little town in Texas where it was absolutely positively dangerous to be LGBTQIA plus. And so it was just not really possible without being outcast, beaten up, and certainly I had the scars to prove it growing up out of that little town. But when I was growing up, one of the places I always wanted to go was to Alaska. I wanted to go to Alaska more than anything else in the entire world. So in my 20s, I finally arranged to get an airline ticket to go to Alaska. And as I was flying up there, I was by myself, and as I was flying up there, I was reading a book by Carl Jung. A nice light reading on your way to Alaska, Carl Jung. So one of the things that Carl Jung said that anything that's unresolved within us will appear outside of us as fate. And I thought, wow, that
Mm.
really sounds interesting. And then we landed into Anchorage probably about 9 o'clock, and I got to my hotel maybe about 11 or so, and it was still broad daylight. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is the coolest thing on the planet. It's still daylight. It's 11:30, so I'm gonna just bust out of this hotel and go walking. And I started walking down the street, and I was really like, endorphins were just like swimming through my bloodstream. I was like just so jazzed to be there. And I saw this woman who was coming toward me, and I was all ready to say, "Hey, how you doing? Or where you from? Blah blah blah." And as I approached this woman at 11 o'clock, broad daylight, in Alaska, she looked me right in the face, and with like this pure, absolute hatred, like just her face was contorted with hatred. And she said, "I hate you people. You make me absolutely sick." And it was like just dripping with vitriol. And I like literally like, looked behind me and was like, what is this woman talking about? And I was blown away by just that much absolute hatred coming from a person who I had never even met before. So I was sort of puzzled, and I was like, okay. And I just kind of kept walking. Uh, and I walked just a little bit further. And somehow, without my knowing it, I was in like one of the smallest gay uh, municipal population areas in the world. It was like tiny. And I walked a little further, and to my left, there was a memorial, a cemetery to um, people who were LGBTQ who had passed away in the 80s and 90s. And I went in there and I sat down, and it dawned on me that that woman was making the assumption that I was gay, which was actually a correct assumption. Um, and all that vitriol and hatred triggered me back to the growing up years in Katy, Texas. And then I went into this little memorial, and I saw a headstone that was for maybe 20 gay men who had passed away. And it said, "Remember them. They are the loving spirit that sings your praises. Remember them. They are the loving spirit that sings your praises." And so I sat down right by that headstone and cried and cried and cried and cried and cried and cried from all of the grief, the homophobia, the violence, the hateful messaging, the fights, all of those things. And I cried until it was probably 20 minutes or so, until I felt like there was only one thing left in me. And that was my absolute, genuine, good, clear, creative, joyous, beautiful, free spirit, free gay spirit, and felt cleansed. And from that moment on, I've really made it my life's work to help create environments that are safe for all people, but especially safe for LGBTQIA plus uh, people. So that story has a lot of levels to it, but it was really a springboard into the possibility of doing my own inner work, and then being able to use that radiance to work in systems across the country. So with that, Sam and I thought it would be interesting for us to talk about being gay men and navigating sort of the halls of corporate America. And I'm happy to share my first question with Sam. So, Sam, you were the CEO of Cenpatico, have done so many incredible things in our field. And I'm wondering, do you feel were your most important contributions or achievements in the field? And then what was your experience being a gay man as you worked in these different environments in your career at different times? What were your challenges and how did you address them? I'm really curious to hear your experience.
So I'll take your last question first. I think that I was extremely lucky to very early on pursue psychology, undergraduate, all the way through graduate. And then until I joined Centene Corporation back in 2004, I worked, basically in the treatment side, as a psychologist, therapist. So I didn't experience in terms of work, I had it pretty easy. I just didn't experience in terms of challenges. Come on, once in a while I'd run across one of us who was kind of like angry or negative, but for the most part, we were an accepting field. Although I still remember 1973, the American Psychiatric Panel that finally said that this was no longer homosexuality was no longer a mental disorder. One of the psychiatrists on the panel wore a full head mask. So that's what it was like, back in the 70s. And yeah, I probably stayed pretty closeted in terms of outside of work, probably until about age 30. And then, which is interesting, ironic, and then probably started being more open with my, gay and lesbian, et cetera, clients about my own sexuality, because I was trained very standard as a therapist about boundaries and all that. But then I began to realize what a great relief that was, to just share that with clients who were gay, lesbian, et cetera. And so I learned that, and there's one of those final questions on here that talked about what's the best way in terms of being an influence and in treating and helping those with behavioral issues. And I would say that number one is, regardless of your theoretical training, share the fact that that's how you identify. If you identify trans, you're still going to be more comfortable than someone who might be talking to a heterosexual male. So, I think that's important. As far as corporate, it was very interesting. One of the nice things about a truly entrepreneurial corporation is the only thing they care about are your numbers. And I was very reticent when I went to Centene. I was very nervous. I was probably went back in the closet for a little bit in 2004. It was a corporate St. Louis-based corporation, managed care corporation. And yet what I discovered pretty quickly is that it was also very entrepreneurial. And so I could have worn, a red dress and my stilettos if I was hitting my numbers and making a profit. And I'm serious. They would still say, oh, he's strange, but no one was going to fire me. I didn't actually get whacked 13 years later until my numbers fell. It's like no one cared. So, there are some good parts about capitalism, I will say, that I really liked. So, in terms of my accomplishments, I was really, really grateful for the fact that when I joined Managed Medicaid in 2004, that one of the first contracts we got was in Arizona. And they introduced this weird thing at the time about consumer-driven care, involving consumers, in their treatment plans, hiring consumers. And so I was really lucky to hire the right person who led that, Terry Stevens. Uh, and it was absolutely revolutionary at the time. I remember the pushback from corporate was like, oh, they're hiring people with mental illness. Yeah, was saying, yeah, you do too. You just don't know who they are. Yeah. So, and it was really, that was a hurdle to kind of get over. So I'm very impressed, very happy that I was part of this movement that engaged with consumers throughout the organization and took and exposed myself and took their advice. My number and email was out there. So if you wanted to get a hold of me, and it was almost never abused, never, you could go straight to the top, and just say, this isn't right, what you're doing to me. And I love that part of it, that I could have uh, that kind of integrity and still, sleep at night and still make money. Although at this point it's questionable. We can all go down the problems with our healthcare system, which is a disaster in any way, shape you look at it. But yeah, so that's it. I think those are kind of what I was proud of.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Sam. I'm curious if you had to deal with any uh, inner homophobia or inner voices as you were
Mhm.
navigating those hallways as well, Sam, and if you care to share a little bit about that.
I think, well, first of all, I don't know. I don't know what it's like now to be young, but I mean, if you grew up anytime, if you're under 50, let's say, or even under 40, I mean, inner homophobia was just imprinted into you. It just really was. I mean, I can go through what should be obvious to everybody, all the role models, et cetera. What few role models we had were silly, role models out there. They were very outstanding. So, where I probably had to deal with it the most was, again, in thinking about treating my patients when I was a therapist, or whatever role where I was in direct treatment. uh, it was something that I struggled with, because if you've got that kind of inner homophobia, and you get a client that's struggling with their identity, who they are sexually, gender, or even if they're not struggling, they're just looking for support. It's, if you can't get past your own stuff, it becomes a problem. So I had to work on that. I did lots and lots and lots of therapy and supervision.
Great, thanks, Sam. I think in my case, the inner homophobia was really around, growing up in Texas. Um, you learn you learn from others what a young man is supposed to be, and that means tough, and that means outdoorsy, and that means being assertive. And the part that got me was when I would tell people that I was gay, that they would automatically think that I was lesser because I wasn't, or because they thought I was like not going to be assertive, or not going to be tough, or not going to be forward. And so I would kind of go out of my way to kind of overcompensate, like to show, that I'm strong, and can handle whatever is thrown at me. And it really kind of steamrolled a real important part of myself, which are the parts that are vulnerable and intuitive and compassionate. So, kind of joining those over time has been uh, really helpful. And I think some of the things that I'm really, for myself, I'm most proud of is we started an LGBTQI treatment program in Texas, and it was really based on a book called Coming Out Spiritually by Christian de la Huerta, who's going to be one of our elders speakers here is coming up. And what Christian put forth in that book were the archetypes of what, the roles that gay people have served over the millennium. If I can, well, I'll get to them later. But anyway, there's these really powerful, compassionate, healing, uh, priestly, trailblazer archetypes that gay people fit. And as we helped people in treatment for mental health and substance use disorder, helping them identify their own uh, goodness, their own bliss, and begin to relate to roles that gay people have played in tribes and cultures across the centuries has been incredibly healing. And then including LGBTQIA plus opportunities, funding in systems change that we initiated across the country, just making sure that that channel was cut so that dollars could get to those providers and to those um, people in need. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later, but I want to jump back to you, Sam. If you wouldn't mind telling us about your formative years and the influences that have shaped the person that you've become, both personally and professionally, and that have actually shaped your work. I mean, did you have role models or people that you kind of looked up to in the field that helped shape your work?
Well, I think that, and I wonder how much of this is true of people who enter our field. I came from a background of, it was kind of a traumatic childhood. Uh, then when I got into college and started seeking therapy and also discovering that I had my own mental illness, major depressive disorder, and anxiety disorders, um, I became very intrigued. Also, the fact that people often found me empathetic. So I had checked, I mean, you've got to have empathy if you're going to go into behavioral health. So, in terms of formative role models, I guess what I just learned pretty early, and it was also a weakness of mine, is that I had to do it all myself, and make myself, and there, again, there's pros, you can get through all kinds of things, but the down is you often don't, engage enough, I think, with role models. I was lucky to have a great education at Duquesne University, which was absolutely nothing I'd ever heard of, called phenomenological psychology. But it taught me critical thinking over and over and over. And it was about self reflection. And so, in terms of forming me as a person, um, I can't say enough about what that program did for me, even though it was kind of not mainstream at all. So that program molded me a lot as well. And plus, along the way, from whether I was a case manager at St. Francis Hospital, uh, here in Pittsburgh, which no longer exists, but I was case manager. I did all kinds of roles, and I always had good people. As to whether it was whether it was focused on LGBT, etc. I'm not sure that that was the main issue. Although these people that were my bosses and mentors in the fields were often, almost, well, not often, always supportive. So I was, again, just very lucky in that respect in terms of how I was being molded. And yeah, Carl Jung, all those, absolutely molded me. And also, what we resist persists. Jim, that was the one that always stuck with me from Carl Jung. And that was very important in the coming out process. The more you bury it, the more it just dominates your energy.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Uh, I think for me, Sam, I was really blessed with a number of role models. Like even right out of undergraduate school, I went to work at an emergency shelter in Pasadena, Texas. Which, if you know Pasadena, Texas, it's where
Mhm,
all the refineries and
mhm.
factories are. It's not the definitely not River Oaks, to say the least. And
And
there were about six.
by the way,
Yeah,
excuse my
yeah.
interruption. Both Jim and I were raised in Texas, but I lived in the big cities like Dallas and Austin, etc. Go ahead, Jim. So we share a lot of these backgrounds, but not the same,
Absolutely.
not the small town stuff. Sorry, Jim.
Yeah, no, no problem. Absolutely. And, so in Pasadena, I had a social worker boss, and her name was Happy Spiller. Her first name was Happy. And and with a name like Happy, she had to be good. And she was. She was a straight woman who absolutely, there were six of us who were brand new in recovery and we were really wanting to make a difference in the world. Two of us were gay, and she was just the most supportive, kind, compassionate springboard into seeing the value in all of us and sort of letting us run amok. I swear to God, the best work I've done in my life was in that little shelter in Pasadena, meeting kids and families exactly where they were and creating recovery-oriented systems of care. So she was one of the first role models. And then my colleague, a guy named Tom Strain, who was a social worker at the Montrose Center in Houston, who sadly passed away, he gave me permission because he was so out and so vulnerable and so real that he gave me permission just to sort of follow in his footsteps. Later on, it was interesting. John Tadich, who's on our call today at Value Options, another just really remarkable mentor, someone who was completely supportive, really just across the board of people who worked with him and has supported so many people. And I just have always felt respected and completely and equal in terms of the whole, gender identity equation. And I can't really, thank John enough for that, for being a role model and a mentor. And then the last two I want to mention, because I've never met them, is Steve Jobs, obviously the founder of Apple, whose number one driver was, in his own words, was empathy. And that was being able to feel the customer experience as much or more of the customer themselves. And that was really instructive to me as therapist and administrator, is that I wanted empathy to be our product. And similarly, Harold Schultz, the founder of Starbucks, and you can say what you want about Starbucks. I love Starbucks, but in studying Howard Schultz, one of the things that Howard, said was, we're not selling coffee. We're selling a third place between home and office where people can get together, and the main driver was love. So Howard was selling love under the guise of a place where people could meet for coffee. And Steve Jobs and his incredible, the Apple products that are now running, just running, all over the place, was really selling empathy. And for us in behavioral health, and especially for those of us that are LGBTQ and or working with them, remembering those two values, what we sell or offer is love and empathy. And I'm not going to sing it, but what the world needs now is love and empathy. Uh, and so, some of those folks were just absolute mentors who have sort of lifted me up to be able to do the things that I've done in my professional career and really made me a better person personally as well. As we're accepted by the sort of larger world, it also is real affirming to our own selves as gay men. So uh, yeah, Sam. So I'm wondering, like, if you look back at yourself when you were maybe coming straight out of college, what messages or message would you give yourself as you sort of launch into the world of behavioral health? Like, what would be the words or the wisdom that you could offer yourself at that younger age?
Well, it goes back to really what you were talking about, empathy. It's hard to be empathetic if you haven't come out. I know it's a sensitive subject in our community, but honestly, if you're going to put yourself out there as empathetic, you got to have to. This is so trite. You got to love yourself, but it's so true. Those trite things are true. Um, the other advice that I would give is I regret not listening to my father who said, you really should take some courses in business, things like that. And you know what? I mean, I picked it up, I learned it, but just get some finance business expertise, because if you haven't noticed, this $2 trillion monster uh, of spending in healthcare is based on money, and a lot of people's jobs rely on that, in businesses, etc. So you should have some basic understanding about how that works, and I think that will absolutely help you deal with insurance companies and understanding how they good work. You should understand that. You should understand how managed care. So that's what I would say to someone young, because you get so excited. I want to get out there, and particularly if you're going down that therapy track and be a therapist. But you really should know this how the system works a little bit. You don't have to be an expert in it, but know what's going on. And so that would be some of my main advice to someone entering the field.
I couldn't agree more, actually, Sam. I had that on my notes to say is that, some of the times we talk about, covert ops in behavioral health, and I don't want to give away too many secrets because I don't want to get in any trouble. But for those of us who are on behalf of LGBTQ people, we have to know how money moves in behavioral health. And so for those of you who are on the call, becoming familiar with, uh, and I even would recommend developing relationships with the CEOs or others who you might have connection with at the health plans or the insurance companies that that are responsible for funding in your area. Part of covert ops is developing relationships with people who are in funding decisions, and sometimes that can simply mean reaching out with an email or a phone call that says, "Hey, my name is Jim Clarkson, and we work with the LGBTQ population as well as other cultures. If you ever need an in-service or if you ever have any questions about this, please reach out to me. I'd love to connect with you or meet you." Same with the state mental health commissioner in your state. It would be worthwhile dropping them an email and just saying, "Hey, my name is Sam Donaldson, and I'm one of your constituents, and we love working with LGBTQ people. And if you ever have any questions or if you ever have any needs for connection or services, please let us know." Same with the single state entity. Same with the insurance um, CEOs or chief medical officers. I would say don't be shy, because that's part of the covert ops is developing those relationships. So when funding opportunities arise, you may be top of mind or maybe in a position to be able to um, connect with folks in that way. The other thing is, and I'm just going to drop a couple of email or website addresses, because part of covert ops also is reading the tea leaves on what's coming down the road. And there's a lot of ways you can do that, but two that I find really useful are the website for NASADAD, the National Association of Alcohol and Drug Abuse Directors. So it's nasadad.org. And the other is a free distribution that's put out by the National Association of Mental Health Program Directors throughout the state. Brian Hepburn sends it out once a week or so, and it has tons of business intelligence as far as where funding may be going. So, those are just a couple, but I just wanted to share those because I absolutely agree with Sam that this whole where money flows and how to influence it is really, really, really important. Many of the insurance companies are going to have advisory boards that, whether they're family advisory boards, consumer advisory boards, provider advisory boards, being able to be on there to advocate for LGBTQ people, no matter what your age, whether you're very young or somewhere in between or on the elder part, of which I'm apparently one of. We can to be in those conversations. The other thing that I would say, if I were going to give a shout out to my younger self, I would really say, Jim, remember who you are. Remember who you are. You are an actual, this is my opinion, but I'm right. You are an actual expression of divinity, of creation, of the creator. You're not just made in the image of higher power. You are actually an expression of who this divinity is. And when you believe that from the inside out, there's energy that happens that is in of itself revolutionary, that people can feel, that people can sense, that people know, that it's no longer a question of, do I have a right to be here? Am I really okay as a gay person? Am I really okay as LGBTQIA plus or any one of those? Damn straight it is, because we are actually expressions of spirit. In other words, God in every cell, in every atom, in every breath, in every thought is fully present, not only in us as LGBTQIA plus people, but all of us. And so it would really be just remember who you are, and no one can take that away from you. And one of the things that that we'll learn, when Christian Huerta does his presentation is, he talks about that we as gay people were the shamans, the healers, the visionaries, the mediators, the peacekeepers, the people who walk between two worlds, the keepers of beauty. And that's been my experience across working with many cultures across the world, talking about the Winkte of the Lakota, the Nadle of the Diné tribe, the Minqua of the Omaha, the Hwame of the Mojave tribe, the Isangoma of the Zulu tribe, the gatekeepers of the Dagara tribe in Africa, the Hajaras in India, who I've gotten to meet and work with, the Gali of ancient Europe. We were always respected for these roles that we filled. So I would say, remember who you are, and that's about our relationship with ourself, and teaching people, our clients, to be able to really own that at a cellular level and clear away the messages and the broken reflections that came back as something other than that has really been key uh, to certainly the work that I've done. And it sounds like also the work that Sam actually has done. So, Sam, let me turn back to you with another question. Given the tectonic shifts that are happening right now, the extermination of DEI initiatives, what concerns do you have about our field right now? And what recommendations might you have to address them? We're really at a crossroads, seems like.
So I guess my concerns are not about DEI initiatives, only because they often turned into programs which no one paid attention to, instead of encompassing the very spirit of that. So I agree that the way that feels now is that we're just going to the opposite. We're getting more hostile, less accepting of people who are different, particularly sexual minorities, et cetera. And I think that is definitely very real. But if I get away from the chaos, from the chaos driver in Washington, and look at the field, my concerns are bigger. I'm concerned about workforce. We do not have enough treatment facilities. We do not have enough individuals in the field, and it's only getting worse. I think it's certainly, I don't know to what extent, but I think it's significant due to pay, reimbursement. I mean, it's horrifying when you read statistics like I was reading the other day that, almost half of practitioners, for example, in behavioral health do not accept insurance and forget about Medicaid. I was, I can say this because it was 2016, so maybe it's all changed, but our Medicaid networks kept me up at night. We had questionable people, questionable psychiatrists, and we were stretched so thin trying to find uh, people. And although I never deliberately engaged in any ghost networking, maybe I realized at some level that I wasn't sure how well our network really held up in terms of treating people. So that more than anything is what worries me. Uh, and I don't know what the solution is. There's always innovators, but I take a very skeptical look at these innovators about value based, measuring effectiveness of treatment. Sometimes I just think all those are just ways to wrap around saying I don't really want to pay you for behavioral health services. And so, yeah, I'm going to give you some ray of light that makes you think, yeah, you can earn some incentives, etc. But at the end of the day, our spending and our reimbursement is abysmal in the field. And so I can tell you that, for example, some of the companies that I'm still aware of now, what they're doing, they're basically paying practitioners the same they paid in 2016. Very little that's changed. So that's what worries me more than this crap is going to pass. And I'm old enough to have been through many, very bad times, AIDS, and let them all die and go to hell. I mean, that certainly had an impact. So that stuff, I believe in the goodness ultimately of the American people, whether they're on my side or not. I don't believe half of America is evil or bad, but I think that, we're going to get through this, Jim, the whole backlash, particularly backlash against our trans community. But I worry, what are we going to do to fix the basics, the financials, as you pointed out, in our systems that don't encourage people to stay and to do well, in behavioral health.
Yeah, thanks. I really appreciate your answer to that, Sam. I wonder, and this is not a question this is a question out of just coming up now. If you saw a ray of light or a ray or a sort of a pathway that was unfolding that might evolve from this, I'm just curious if you might have some thoughts about, maybe directions that we or the field itself might take as we navigate this.
I think the main ray of lights are people like Pamela Hyde, who led the charge for equal access to behavioral health. Um, I think there are people out there that are mission driven, still believe what they're doing at all levels. Hi, Pam, at all levels of the enterprise that we live in. Um, the ray of light, I struggle all the time with how do we deal with this financial issue. And I think the ray of light that I've seen in my lifetime is certainly uh, the less stigma, the, the reality that almost everyone understands that behavioral health can help a lot of people in a lot of situations. That's been enormous in terms of its change. It really has. Um, but maybe, we need to support ideas that say, well, maybe this, this capitalistic, profit-driven way of funding any kind of medical or behavioral health is not working. And that's a hard thing for me to say coming from corporate America, but I, I struggle with what's happening out there. So sorry, I don't know the rays of lights. What about you, Jim? What's the ray of light for you? Because now I don't want to take everyone down.
No, I really appreciate what you're saying. I think it's, you're realistic, and mentioning Pam Hyde. I mean, one of the things that we saw in New Mexico under Pam's leadership was the development of local collaboratives and communities really having to own their both behavioral and healthcare in general, and really breaking down silos at the federal level. We saw that working with watching Pam's leadership do that in breaking down silos that had been there for many, many years. And I think that's one of the rays of light now, is that, I think this is really a remarkable opportunity for us to get back to relational ways of healing and being together and away from strictly transactional, financial, uh, empirical only models, that we really have to, sort of listen up, not just listening with our ears and our brain, but listening with our somatic knowledge, with our feelings, our physical sensations, intuitions, dreams, symbols, the spirit world, the natural world, really listening up in a way that brings in more of what it means to be human, and connecting with others in community in that way, as well as, on the flip side is artificial intelligence. I think that there's some, real opportunities there for artificial intelligence to be to augmented that kind of community-based work. So just that, I see it as a real opportunity, but it's definitely not a short straight line. It's going to be a zig and a zag and a spiral. But I think some good can come out of it.
And I really am excited about these younger generations that are coming up. And I get so tired of, why I get tired of ageism. I also get tired of generationism, like, somehow elders are better, wiser, etc. And certainly there's some truth to that. But, I see, a lot of people questioning balance in their lives, um, how to manage people, talking seriously about devices and all the social media. You know, I see a lot of questioning going on that gives me a lot of hope, uh, because I think this younger generation is going to carry the mantle quite well, and that gives me a ray of hope as well.
Absolutely. Very well said. Yeah. So, any messages or pieces of advice that you'd offer to the field now, Sam, based on your professional and personal life experience?
Um, the field in general? Well, that's a huge question, Jim. I didn't see that
Uh,
on here. To the entire field.
how about services to
I
LGBTQIA plus?
well, well,
Might narrow it down a little.
well. The one thing that I would advise the whole field is to follow along with where things are shifting, and that is to the biology and the neurology. Uh, you can dig your feet in all you want, but you really need to learn that stuff and get proficient. You don't have to be an expert, but you should. Again, going back to, everybody in the field just needs to get on board and learn neurology, because it changed my life and changed how I looked at behavior and how it is so complex. In terms of our community, LGBTQI, um, advice to the whole field, again, I'm just going to sound like a broken record. There's nothing better you can do than to be open and out with others to the extent that you can. You can preach all kinds of things, but that will be the most important thing. As Saint RuPaul said, if you can't love yourself, how the hell are you going to love somebody else? And that's true. And I hope that doesn't sound too trite, but the coming out process and being out is important, and it's so much easier today, uh, by a magnitude of thousands than it was when we grew up, Jim.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, thanks, Sam. Uh, I think, the only other things that I would add to that is, going back to how money moves and, that whole covert ops piece that I think is really important. I found it to be really effective. Uh, there'll be opportunities for all of us, not only to develop those relationships that I talked about earlier with decision makers and funders, even if it's just an email. But you may find yourself in positions where you are developing requests for responses, RFAs, RFPs, to make sure that you include language that is specific to LGBTQIA plus. When you're doing contract work, you can put that line in there under trauma-informed care, and most people won't even read it. And yet, once it's in the contract, then it becomes, actionable, required action. And the other thing is sort of becoming a Trojan horse. And I found that trauma-informed care oftentimes is a vehicle to make sure that cultural responsiveness and issues for LGBTQ people are absolutely positively included. Some of you will be in positions to help support younger LGBTQ people by choosing them to be on committees, to be in important positions of decision making, to give people a chance. And we have that influence. And then as Sam said, I think for those of us who are LGBTQ, to really live as authentically and as graciously within that as possible, to really own who we are. And one of the things that we teach at Via Positiva is, if we authentically live from our source, that we not only can implement better business practices, but we also tend to put out a message that we are a safe place, we are a good people place, we are a place where not only LGBTQIA plus people are safe, but people of any cultures and all, that this is a safe place for you to discover who you are and how to radiate that out into the world. So I think that, to me, is the absolute key. And younger people I think, are finding a more direct path to that, and are finding ways to find spirituality and connection that genuinely works for them. Not secondhand psychology or secondhand theology, but really finding the things that work for me. This is really mine. And I think the more we can support young people, or follow their lead, as the case may be, the better off for all of us. So, last question, Sam. If you were to recommend one or two books that you believe all of us should read, what would they be and why? And then we're going to take the rest of the time just for questions and conversation from everybody on the call.
Well, this is where I kind of came up kind of flat in terms of thinking about books. So, I'm going to toss it back to you, Jim, because I bet you have some excellent suggestions.
Yeah, I think I got a couple here. I'd love to read. The one that I would say right off the bat would be Coming Out Spiritually by Christian de la Huerta, Huerta. He's going to be one of our speakers here in the coming months. Just a book full of hope and guidance for LGBTQ people. The second one is the Trauma of Everyday Life by Dr. Mark Epstein. definitely an incredible book that really contextualizes trauma. And then the last one, which may be a little bit odd, but it really speaks to LGBTQ people, and that's The Way of the Shaman by Michael Harner. Many gay people have had to tap into their intuition, their inner knowing, their somatic knowing. A shaman is, sort of defined as a person who can see in the dark, and that is meaning the person that can see into the spirit world. And LGBTQ people have had that capacity for centuries. And so those are just a few of the books that I would
Jim, I would
recommend.
add one more, if I may.
Yeah, yeah. Go ahead, Chris.
Thanks. Because women are different in this world. Leadership the Eleanor Roosevelt Way. If you've not read that one, I would encourage you, especially if you're a woman, to read that one. It's really good. Really good. And it's 1930s and it's 2025 and it's just like, oh yeah, okay, heck. So
Thanks,
I would
Chris.
add that to the list.
Yeah, thank you so much. Well, let me first of all just thank Sam so much for your experience, your wisdom, your insight, Sam. It's always a delight to work with you.
Thank
And
you.
Chris, I'll just turn it over to you for just questions, comments, additions, curiosities, curses, whatever we got out there.
No, don't got anything out there. So here's my first question, Sam, for you, and probably for you too, Jim. When I went to college, so late 70s, early 80s, we were still in the DSM-2, and we were still mentally deficient, those of us that were gay. I mean, that's what it was. How did you move past that in your work? It took me a long time because I was young. I was 17 when I went to college. I was young and I thought, oh, am I like wrong in my life? Am I like wrong in my life? So my question to you is, how did you manage that?
I think for me, I use DSM as a tool. Uh, and fortunately, thanks to some people that taught me a lot about how to be critical thinking about things, just because it's in print doesn't mean, or it's been blessed, doesn't mean it's the truth. I think that helped a lot. To this day, anytime I see, for example, dysphoria connected to gender or identity, I mean, I just think that's crazy stuff. And, yes, I mean, anytime you feel different, you're going to feel dysphoric. And I don't know that makes you mentally ill. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah, I think that was helpful and again, my program at Duquesne University, gosh, I hope they kick back some money or something, it just taught you that these were tools and that's what you use them as. Jim?
How do we change the system, Sam, to
No.
Hang on, Sam.
allow the system,
I'm going
not
to take
the
a crack at that first question there, Chris,
okay.
because I really appreciate what Sam said. And there's there was a psychiatrist. She's passed away now, but her name was Alice Miller, from a Swiss psychotherapist, and she talked about this thing called poisonous pedagogy. And she said it's any method or experience that teaches people not to trust their own inner feelings, inner intuitions, or inner processes. And really young, I think this is one of the gifts of being gay, even though I know other straight people and others have it too, but I can tell you it's really a gift that any experience that I had, whether it was at church or with psychologists or therapists or whatnot, that my body could feel the bullshit meter, that if it makes me feel less than, lower
Yeah.
than, not trusting myself, feeling my heart going dim, feeling my body contracting, that the problem was with it and not with me. And I think if that's something that we can continue to teach, that somatic inner body wisdom knowing, that when people are actually putting, putting you down, or as they say, peeing on your leg and telling you it's rain, that we know that's bullshit, right? So to get to your question, that's one of the gifts is that, inside of us, if we have capacity to listen to our full body knowing, we know whether it's the Vatican, the APA, the AMA, whoever it is, when they're giving us advice that does not fit, that we don't have to believe it or buy into it or support it. So it sounds pretty simple, but again, it's just absolutely right on the money that
And
we
so,
know when people are doing things that are against our own goodwill.
and so how do you, gentlemen, who I love, how do you translate that to the female portion of this population, which is further disadvantaged in a lot of places? I'm gonna get everything that you're saying, and I believe it, and I live it, and I do all that kind of stuff. But we have so many women that have been displaced, and the LGBTQ, well, the gay women, lesbian women, pick them, have been displaced further. How do we help them rise? How do we help them rise? Because they are grand people, and there are a number of them on the call. And they are grand people. They do great work in this field, but they get pushed down even further than you as gay men get pushed down.
Obviously, we have the advantage of being male and white.
White.
That we were born with that, and when we were born with that, we were born with tons of advantages and privileges. I think that a lot of feminist authors and writers have influenced us, beginning with some of the very early ones that have influenced me. And I guess for me, I don't think things are going to get better. My theory was always that a lot of homophobia was based in the fact that women are not equals in our society, because anything to be like a woman, was already, somehow not a good thing. To look like a woman, to be effeminate, whatever. And while I recognize that those who are lesbian or maybe trans female, whatever, uh, I don't think. I think we all have to put our shoulder against the same wheel and somehow get women over the line where they're fully, at least in this culture, fully equal humans with full autonomy and decision making and all of that. And I look at Iceland. If you ever studied the culture of Iceland, which is fascinating, I got into studying about it because it is often rated as the number one country in the world for true equity in power, okay, leadership, etc., between men and women. And that is the culture to look at and try to understand. And how do we get that here with our long, long history of misogyny? We've got still a ways to go. And we've had a lot of big setbacks, in the past 10 years. And so we got to move forward. And I think when women reach true equity as part of the human race in this culture, then I think the other things will start to take care of themselves. But that may be my naivety. So I fight a lot, even more than LGBTQI causes. I get even more focused on causes for women, because to me, that is ultimately my salvation, I think, in being truly free. Jim, what do you think?
Yeah, thanks, Sam. I really agree with you. And I also will say that it has really been women that have, I think, saved my life and empowered me in ways immeasurable. Just to give an example, years ago I was sleeping and had a dream, and this woman came to me in a dream, and she introduced herself as Gangaji, the goddess of the river in India. And she sang this incredibly beautiful song, and she said, "You're gonna come to India, and you're gonna do some good work here, and we're gonna welcome you." And I kid you not, 2 days later, I got a call from a friend and said, "Hey, I got two," who knew nothing about this. He said, "I got 2 free business class tickets to India, and would you like to go?" And I said, I just say, thank you, God, and hop on the plane, and we're off to India, and had the opportunity to interview the priests and others, priestesses and others that were followers of this beautiful goddess image that came to me in a dream. And so we bounced off that, did a lot of interviews. We bounced off that, went to the deer park near Varanasi in India, where the Buddha preached his first sermon, and spent time there talking to the Buddhist monks. And the Buddha is actually both male and female. It's not a singular, single gendered being. It's male and female. And similarly, Our Lady of Guadalupe in Mexico City, and Pele in the Big Island of Hawaii. And we asked people, what these mythological women meant to them in terms of their day-to-day life and their mental health. And so by being there, we were in Pituoshan in China near Shanghai, where Kuan Yin, also bigendered deity. And we spent time there on the island talking to the monks and the pilgrims and people there about Kuan Yin's healing capacity. And all these have this feminine energy and presence. And then in sort of summing it up, what we learned from these women deities or mythological figures was that all of us, all humans, are infinite goodness. This is their opinion, and I take their opinion at face value, that we're infinite goodness, infinite kindness, infinite creativity, infinite love, infinite beauty, infinite prosperity and abundance, infinite humor, playfulness, acceptance, and delight. That was sort of the sifting through all the feedback that we got, that's who we really are through the eyes of the feminine spirit of the world, the wise ones of the world. So I would say that really, how can we create structures to support women who already have the power of creativity and generativity and wisdom, creating structures where those can be respected and disseminated, and part of the creation of the environment of wellness that we're all sort of seeking. So that was a long answer, but that question about women is really crucial.
Well,
because
and Jim, it was perfect. It was perfect. And I wonder if you would share that just list with me, and we'll put it on the website and say, here you go, friends. Here you go. This is who you are. This is what you do already. But just that reminder to say, this is who you are, and this is what you do.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Sam, my friend, where are you?
Right here.
There you go.
Okay.
We're about done. We got 3 minutes left. What more wisdom and love would you share with us? Thank you for being here already. And it's been great to have you. What would you share with us as a parting thought?
I think that one of the advantages of being a senior is you've seen a lot
You
in
made a
this country.
face. You made a face.
Yes, I never liked senior, but it is true. And you know, it really helps puts things in perspective. And so I say to everybody that's worried, and particularly those who are younger, you know, learn about American history, learn about the history of this culture and how we got here, and how many times we've been kind of repeating ourselves, trying to get it right. Churchill always said of America that American government will do everything over and over again until it gets it right. You know, it will do all the wrong things. And we do, and then we eventually get it. And so even in this field, even with that, you know, I'm excited about how the world is going to go without me. And I'm really much more optimistic, and rarely share this much optimism as well. What about you, Jim? Fellow senior, almost. Actually, he's not even senior yet. Damn it.
Hey, I'm close. I'm getting there.
Close, no cigar.
I would, well, I will. I not would like to. I will thank you both, Jim and Sam, for being here today. Love the conversation. Love the whole focus on LGBTQIA plus. You know, we can go all those places and all those words, all those letters. I've lived my life just right behind you, and going, okay, can I do this? And I did not live out loud, Jim, for a long time. I did not live out loud because it was harder. It was just harder. But I live out loud now, and we're all okay. And we have changed, in my opinion, the behavioral health world. Not because we're gay, but because we've changed the behavioral health world. So, Sam, thank you for being here today. Jim,
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us, and more than your hosting role that you've done for our others, but the dialogue between the two of you has been just awesome, and I'm grateful for you both.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody, for joining us. Take care, y'all.
Thank
We'll
you.
see you next month.
Right. Sounds good.